Hello, this is the second recording for the Industry Briefs blog. Today I'll be discussing the current week 5, and my progress for this week and what I'm hoping to get through in the following week. This week I continued where I left off last week, completing my outline for the different classes of enemies and working out a rough idea for speed and group size. This will be a greater help later down the line when I get the basic functionality down for my enemy AI, and I can create different children and set them up to fit the outlined archetypes. My main focus and development throughout the past week have been heavily focused on the more technical aspects of the project. I set up my project using the advanced locomotion system to help me establish a familiar movement layout like the Division 2, as well as putting a large focus on developing the essential elements of combat into the project. As I began working on this, I realised that the best way to really showcase how these enemies function and behave is to simulate an actual fight against the player, with the goal to panic and pressurise the player. The best way to really capture this feeling is through personal experience, so once my enemies have developed a little more in the strategic and intelligence areas, I will begin testing out how they feel to the player and their take on the simulation. So continuing on with the setup for the project, I created a simple shooting mechanic for the player using a line trace, developing the player's UI to mimic similar layouts and functionality to the Division, creating a basic enemy that ragdolls when their health reaches 0, and developing grenades that can be thrown by the player. An aspect of this project that has been made significantly easier is the calculation of the health for both players and enemies. During the development of my second assignment for game creation, I developed a health component for the player and enemies, so to help increase my development time, I migrated the asset and the enemy health bar UI over. A small issue I've encountered while using the ALS project is that I can't include event begin play, since this completely prevents the character from moving around and producing several runtime errors. This is obviously one of the drawbacks of using a pre-established project and building on top of someone else's work. However, I have persevered and found small workarounds to these issues. So for example, the health bar above enemies is present, but for the asset to actually be modified when shot by the player, I have had to use a validated get to check if we have a successful connection to the health bar and health component, and in a situation that we aren't valid, it creates the connection needed and then loops back to modify the health. This isn't really ideal, but the best solution I can see currently. Creating the system to throw the grenades was a new development for me. I had an idea of how the grenade should function in general, creating a multi-trace sphere and using a for each loop to apply damage to the enemy. With the prediction of the trajectory of the grenade, this was an element I was not familiar with and required some research into how to create this effect. I ended up using a predict projectile path node, which helped me use a referenced starting location and predict several points along an arc as to where the grenade would land. I used this data to spawn my own guide to show where the item would ultimately land. This is a very small implementation, but it helps with creating it for the AI as well as developing my skills with projectiles. With the intention of simulating a realistic Division 2 scenario, I also created a very simple blueprint actor that the player can interact with to restock all their ammo and grenades when they are in the heat of battle, and to also prevent the player from running out of supplies and not being able to successfully enjoy the experience. My final developments for this week were switching the pre-existing NPC to use my own AI components, blackboard, and behavior tree. This was a very straightforward setup for me, having literally practiced this for many projects now. I took this opportunity to also reuse some of the tasks that came with the ALS project, such as looking at the player and getting a random location to move to. I developed a very basic way for the enemy to switch between different movement states, as well as creating blackboard keys that trigger different behaviors. Currently, my AI has a spot player, attack player, and a seek shelter sequence. With the seek shelter behavior, this is where my enemies find a random location to move to and crouch at. My actual plan is to use the environment query system to help the enemy find an acceptable shelter point and hide, rather than just picking a random spot, which can be quite open. I plan to create several sequencer renders of these events to show in real time how my progress develops and how they look in a genuine situation as well. Finally, my focus for the next week is to start digging into and researching the EQS systems and running them to help my AI behave, before beginning to focus on the unique aspects of each archetype. Another small quality feature that I would like to develop is a way of seeing where the gun is actually aiming at. It's extremely hard to know in third person, so laser or crosshair would definitely help resolve this issue.